You will be expected to identify the charges of several main group ions, for example, 1A, 2A, plus 1, plus 2, 6A, nonmetals and metalloid, -2, and halogens, -1. Okay, with that in mind, let's look at worked example 2.6. In the United States, fluoride is added to our water supply to build healthy teeth. Write the chemical equation for the ionization of fluorine atoms to form fluoride ions. So that means, do we add an electron? Do we lose an electron? And then, what is the charge of the fluoride ion? So I'll give you a minute to work on this. Okay, so here is our equation. When we add an electron is going to be on the left-hand side of the arrow next to a plus sign. So we're adding this electron to fluorine. And then anytime we add an electron to an atom, the charge becomes more negative by how many electrons we add. So since we're only adding one electron, the charge is -1. Now, one thing I want to point out is on both sides of the arrow, the charge is exactly the same for the total side. So if we look at the left-hand side, the fluorine atom doesn't have a charge, but an electron has a charge of -1. And on the right-hand side, the fluoride ion has a charge of -1. So on both sides of the arrow, there's an overall charge of -1. And we also know that fluoride would have a -1 charge because it's in family 7A, and these elements want to gain 1 electron to get 8 valence electrons. All right, now in your homework, you are asked to calculate the number of electrons in ions, and there's a simple formula to figure that out. It is the atomic number, which is Z, minus the charge. And when you get your answer, you want to make sure it makes sense. Negatively charged ions will have more electrons than protons, and the charge will tell you how many more electrons. So -1, 1 more electron than the number of protons. -2, 2 more electrons than the total number of protons. And in a positively charged ion, the number of protons is greater than the number of electrons. And again, the charge tells you what that difference is. So if you have a charge of +1, that means you have 1 more proton than the total number of electrons. If you have a total charge of +2, then you have 2 more protons than the total number of electrons. But you can always use this equation to figure out the number of electrons as well. So how many electrons are in the fluoride ion? Pause the video. So here I used the formula. The number of electrons equals atomic number minus the charge. The charge of the fluoride ion is -1, and the atomic number of fluorine we get on the periodic table is 9. There it is, fluorine atomic number 9. So when I subtract -1 from 9, that actually translates to 9 plus 1, and I have 10 electrons. And that makes sense because I have a charge of -1. That means I have 1 more electron than I have protons. So 10 electrons is 1 more than 9, which is the number of protons in this ion.